All right, everybody, and welcome to episode 243 of the 9 Years podcast with myself, Nick Draper, and the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deacons. Lots of news to talk about this week. We will be looking back at the win at Wigan from last Saturday, our first win in League One this calendar year. We'll be looking ahead to a big game with Rochdale at the weekend and some managerial changes in League One as well, and a new signing to talk about. We also want to touch, as part of our main discussion this week, on the salary cap in League One or League One and League Two and what's been going on there. But to start with, Stu, I'm going to hand over to you. Keys to Plough Lane have been handed over to Joe Palmer, and the stadium is now officially, completely, entirely ours.
Yeah, and we were saying a little while, haven't we, in terms of can't wait to get the keys and big bunch of keys. And I'm not saying they listen to me at all, because why would you? That's stupidity. But the video is great in terms of Joe, a good little Joe Palmer with his mask, although sometimes he has a mask, sometimes doesn't have a mask, and social distancing, all that sort of stuff. But I just love the way they do the keys. Like, basically, they get every pocket with a bit of keys, bit of a good sort of eye rolling from Joe, and then I was a bit concerned that they damaged the pitch. Like, they took all their stuff off, chucked it on the pitch, chucked their helmets off. Nick's looking at me very vague, because he's not watched it yet. But you know what? I thought it was good. You know, it's a good way of doing it. There was a little bit of background to it. So the start of it was very much a sort of a timeline of what happened, which we all know by now. But really good, really enjoyed it. It's nice that we've now got the keys. There's some really, I have said this already, I would love to see some more pictures, because, you know, I haven't been there. I say you and I have been fortunate to be there back in December. But a lot of stuff has changed, especially in our West End. So it'd be lovely to see. But the bits you do see, like the conferencing suite and that, is just massive. I don't think we realise how big it is. Do you know what I mean? It's a massive, you've been there, Nick, haven't you? It's a big stadium, that West End. But the amount of room, it just looks amazing. And so congratulations, Buckinghams have done their job. And we now have the keys.
Conference facilities have now been renamed even National League facilities. See what I've done there? And also, I must say, I haven't watched this video yet because I am on my work laptop pretty much 24/7 at the moment. And if I Google helmets on the pitch, I worry what might be flagged up. My keys, by talking of keys, my favourite keys, of course, Alicia keys. But let's move on. Salary cap. There was news breaking. See, my concept of time in lockdown is just completely shot to pieces. This was actually, I believe, on Tuesday when the announcement was made that the proposed salary cap, which would have limited League One clubs to a squad wage budget of $2.5 million and League Two clubs to $1.75 million, that has been scrapped. Claimed, in their words, unlawful and unenforceable. One League One official who renamed nameless. It's not like we had a name for him, we've decided not to say who it is. We just haven't got a name for this person. They said spending on salaries should be linked to revenue and not a set amount for very different clubs. What this was an attempt to do, I should say, the current salary restrictions remain in place from previously. What is called the Salary Cost Management Protocol, which means that for League One clubs, we can only spend 60% of our turnover on wages, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But the idea of the salary cap, $2.5 million, was essentially to create a level playing field amongst the clubs. I'm not sure if it was the answer, but I think the fact that the PFA have been the ones to champion the cause of not doing it shows perhaps are they a little bit, obviously they're acting in the self-interest of the players, but again, Stu, as we keep saying, a recurring theme on the podcast this season, there's not evidence that football is just completely in a different, living in a fantasy world, not realising that at some point players might have to get used to not earning the salaries that third-tier players are becoming accustomed to earning.
Yeah, and I think, the vote went through quite comfortably in the end. I think there's only I think the top 6-7 clubs, they are Ipswich, Sunderland, Pompey, those sort of clubs voted, obviously. People like that. Yeah, they voted against it. And I get that. And maybe, do you know what? Maybe the wage cap wasn't fair in terms of why should we be, it did favour the small clubs. There's no doubt about that. But it wasn't about trying to do a level playing field. It was actually trying to protect clubs against themselves. Because, we only have to look at one club in our league already in terms of Wigan to see what chaos happens when you get somebody in control who buys it and then puts it into administration the next day. That was already in, but that was the old, pre-normal sort of side of it. We're in a worse position now. I don't think it's going to change too much. The Sunderlands of this world and Pompey's want to spend that money. Up to them, but Pompey are losing like 700 grand a month because of revenue that's not coming in through the gates and that. So if we think that clubs are going to have loads of money, I don't know. I don't think it's going to make much difference. I think you Ipswich, Sunderland's, Pompey's are still going to get better players because they probably have the better facilities and stuff like that. It won't affect us. But the big problem is that, the economy's crashed. And do you know what? I don't think the players, the PFA sometimes live in they have a bit of a bubble. It's like, in a way, I can imagine the PFA have, these special sort of ceremonies. We've got all the Premier League players coming in. They're not interested about Joe Bloggs down in League Two. They're not really, they're not understanding that. And we know from the summer that the amount of players that struggle to get contracts still now appearing. That's going to be worse this summer. Like, we think it was bad we think it was bad last summer. It's going to be even worse this summer. And the salary cap's not really going to, the salary cap being lifted is not going to do too much. But we have to protect the clubs in a way for them not to spend money that they don't have. I saw in terms of the actual solicitor or lawyer, who turned over, who represented the PFA, was along the line saying that this wage basically stopped teams from dreaming of being able to get better, without actually realising the fact that look at the clubs that are in serious trouble because they've done that. Yeah. Look at the bottom of. I was really amazed by this, but if you look at the bottom of the Championship, I couldn't believe you've got clubs like Derby and Birmingham and Sheffield Wednesday. I know Sheffield Wednesday had onto that point deduction, but these are clubs that should have serious money, but they're in trouble. Yeah. So we can all see what's happening.
But why is it the role of the Football League to put in salary caps to stop clubs from doing this or overspending? Surely at some point the clubs have got to be working this one out for themselves. It seems like we don't need, the way we're run and managed, yes, we've made a loss in the past, but it's not crippled us. Stadium issue aside, I would consider a different issue. We have to be sustainable. We have to live broadly within our means. It shouldn't need regulation to convince clubs to do this. It does seem that a salary cap, for me, I think some form of salary cap is needed to ensure that we have a stability of competition and fairness in competition. Maybe not the rigidity of the 2.5 million set limit, but maybe something like, I think Tranmere Rovers chairman came out on Twitter and suggested something along the lines of a set amount, maybe 2.5 million, but then with room to manoeuvre in terms of percentage of gate receipts or something like that, not completely tied to revenue. Because, current 60% turnover is it doesn't work. People can still flood money into a football club the way that Salford have done, Crawley have done in previous years, and you could mask it in many, many different ways. But maybe something that's linked rigidly to areas of finances within the club, like gate receipts, like merchandise, perhaps, maybe not sponsorship deals, for argument's sake. And that's where you could limit it, because you do want to ensure that you've got you don't want to see clubs, bigger clubs will be more successful in the long term because of that, because they have more money to spend, but at least it makes everything else seem a little bit more fair and gives everyone a punching chance maybe without having to bankrupt themselves. Or like you've said there, go for the Wigan approach, which is have a decade or so of success and then collapse spectacularly.
Yeah, and do you know what, football fans, the thing about football is we all dream, don't we? We all dream of success, and we dream of having the good players and a good run in the cup. And the thing is, that just doesn't happen unless you put money into it. It's a sad fact of life, And so it's just as much as, I agree with you saying, why can't the clubs self-regulate themselves? Really, because of the fans. The fans realistically don't really want the club. The club don't. Whenever someone buys, I'll never forget, on TalkSport and that, saying, "Oh, we must spend this money on this player, we must spend that," and the clubs feel under pressure. The fans never ever ask, "Have we got that money?" You know, because they're not interested in that. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes we live in a fantasy world of Football Manager and stuff. You just spend it. A lot of football a lot of transfer fees are spent on IOUs. That's the, you know, I'll just give you an example, going a little bit off track, but teams like Brighton and that have literally already mortgaged out the TV revenue from next season to have it now.
Yeah.
So they're already borrowing money that, of course, is going to come in, but they're borrowing money against next year's earnings. And it's just like, how can that continue? You're literally just trying to get as much money as possible. But you've only got to look at the salary cap to see what the issues are when you look at the bottom of, look at Bolton, look at Southend. Southend, always quite strong in League Two, weren't they, in League One? How do they get, we always knew they had problems paying their tax bill and that sort of side of it. All you've got to do is look at Bury, or you've gone out of business. So there's no regulation. I think the problem is you can't protect the clubs. I think these clubs are going to, I don't know how you stop them. There's rules around everything. And I think the salary cap, the problem with the salary cap was that the Championship didn't join in. So there was a situation where the salary cap was going to be 18 million for the Championship. And that worked out that the minimum wage for a player, I think I heard something like £12,500 a week, which wasn't competitive. And I was just laughing my head off thinking, okay.
£12,500 a week.
Yeah, if the salary cap was done on 18 million in the Championship based on a 23-man squad, I think it worked out that the maximum salary you could have would be £12,500. And the argument was that they wouldn't be able to go into the Premier League because they'd have to spend loads of money to get in the Premier League. But this is the problem. The problem is actually top to bottom. It's not our problem. The problem is the Premiership is so detached to it. And there's your problem. Teams going up from League One into Championship, big clubs can. Sunderland would deal with it. Pompey with. Look at Wickham. Wickham trying their best to do that. And give some credit to Wickham, which I don't like doing. They haven't tried to break the bank. They've just been honest and gone, do you know what? We're going to try our best. But they will benefit from the money in the Championship. But they were never, ever going to be able to compete with the clubs in there. So I don't know how you do it. I think football's been broken for ages. It doesn't seem to want to mend itself. I think the only thing that I would like to do is, talking about Salford, is Gary Neville's obviously involved in that. There's about 7 people that put a plan together to have an independent authority regulating football. And I think that's a good idea on that side of it. That's the only way you're going to be able to get a hold of this bandwagon. Do you know what I mean? It's just the Premiership is out of control.
There's many areas of society, though, that are in this position. You talk about transfer fees and how things are budgeted against on IOUs and future profits and future revenues, like Brighton with the TV money and stuff like this. Same with student loans. It's just money that's never, ever going to be paid back. I don't know where the end game for this is. I don't know what happens to this money. It's almost like fictitious money. It doesn't actually exist in any real terms, which I can't be the only one thinking, I'm not sure how this ends up. Probably with China dominating the world, but that's another conversation for another day. We spoke about the 60%, the current rules of 60% of your turnover. I looked at our accounts, the last published accounts I could find on Companies House, which were for the year-end 2019, so June 2019. Said we had a turnover then of roughly 5.8 million, which would have given us a maximum wage budget, if we so wanted, of 3.48 million. That is absurd. We'd never even touch that level, but that just shows you the absurdity of that salary cap, because it doesn't actually mean anything. It's not going to discourage anyone from putting money in or spending, really, is it? If you think about us being sustainable, if we can go to 3.5 million, people are going to continue to chuck money at it, as we have seen in League One time after time.
Yeah, and you know, it's an interesting thing, because I suppose you could look at it from our angle and think, okay, a salary cap of 2.5 million, which it was, gave us a chance. But actually, we just moved to a new ground, and we got revenue streams coming into that, and we can go. Let's not forget, we can probably go up to 20,000, at Plough Lane in time. Not straight away. So, would the salary cap hinder us? I don't know. You're right. £3.5 million wage budget seems ridiculous. However, you don't know how the fans are going to want to go. We've got fans are ambitious, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? How long can we stay with this model? Because with this model, we're never going to hit £3.5 million. We should never do that. We shouldn't be trying to keep up with everyone else. We just got to be smarter in how we do it, that's a whole new story on that. But yeah, do you know what? You hear so much, It is IOUs. It is basically, it's just money that, no one ever pays a player and pays it outright. Always done in instalments. I mean, if you look at in the last season, there was players moving on loan to big clubs. I think like Barcelona to Inter. That was simply to get them off them books so they could then hit the financial fair play.
Yeah.
And Derby, look at Derby. Derby sold their ground to their chairman and then counted that as revenue. Yeah. There's going to be ways around everything, and that's your problem. There's always a way around something. But do you know what? We have no idea when fans are going to be back in the grounds now, and we've been saying this for a little while. Anyone looking at budgets for next year, we may not have full houses in Plough Lane until 2022. I know it sounds horrible, but that's potential. Where's the money? It's just, teams like Sunderland and Pompey, is there any money? Should they be spending that amount of money? Football, like I say, football is very uncertain for the next year or so easily.
I like the idea, though, as you say, when fans are back in and we can get sellouts at Plough Lane, 9,500, whatever it is to begin with, and then we can top up a minimum budget. So if they were to put in a 2.5 million fine, but individual circumstances of clubs that have bigger stadiums that can get more fans in, then they can say, well, actually, X percentage of your gate money every year, you can top up your budget that way. I kind of like that idea I think that did come from Tranmere. Andy Holt had some thoughts on this as well, do you not?
Yeah, Andy Holt's always great value, and he's been that the whole way through the pandemic, and sometimes just saying it as it is. But there was quite a big discussion on this on his Twitter feed Wednesday evening, and someone just chucked a question back to him, basically going, well, "What would you do? What would you do?" It's all right moaning. It's like anything in it. We can all moan about something. What's the alternative? And he said, on top of his head, he would like to have a 3-tier wage cap within League One, and based on income. So what he wanted to do, you could have a 6 million, 4 million, £2 million wage cap, and it would be based on your income. So if your income was, or what level you were, the income meant you could only spend 2 million, then that's all you could spend. But it also, if you then sold players and got more income, you could go up to 4 million. You could go up to a 4 million bracket, and you could go up to. So it didn't stop growth. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's perfect. But that's a different way of looking at it. It's having 3 divisions within a league. If we look at it now, we've got that anyway. Probably even more than that if you look at that sort of side of it. So I don't think we're going to get away. I think there's going to be something else that's going to come in. The thing with the EFL, they've done what they always do. They don't do anything properly. And as we looked at Sheffield Wednesday and things like that, they're easily countered. Was it a surprise they lost this legal case?
And following on from that legal case, the PFA did release a statement, and I had a wry smile on my face when they, in celebration of the decision to scrap it, they said the PFA believes it is now in the best interest of the league, the clubs and the players to work together and agree on rules that promote financial stability. Well, PFA, first thing I would do is actually ignore salaries, caps for squads. I would have salary caps for individuals and say you can't pay any player more than X amount of money because it's absurd that footballers should be getting paid that money anyway. But again, that's another conversation for another day from a bitter teacher. We all know about our public sector salaries. But hey, speaking of players, let's talk players, let's talk teams, let's talk football on the pitch. A win at long last in League One last Saturday at Wigan, at what is now, I hate using sponsor names. I'll come on to this again later when I get to Rochdale, but I don't know what to call Wigan's stadium, so I'm going to call it the Wigan Stadium to avoid using a sponsor name because I hate
Stadium in Wigan.
The stadium in Wigan. Wigan came from 2-0 down to level up the game at 2-2, but when we got a penalty to win 3-2, before we get into the details of it, Stu, been here many, many times before. Feels like Groundhog Day. We have a big relegation battle and we end up winning it with a late penalty, be it Torquay, be it Warsaw in Poland, be it Rochdale a couple of years ago. Just always seems to happen. It's that little thing, as I said, it's that little guardian angel we have. Wimbledon are struggling with the result, give them penalty somehow. Make the opposition goalkeeper do something ridiculous, like come for a ball where he was never going to get there first, gave us a penalty. It's unlikely from that position we'd have scored. Anyway, we got fortunate with that one. So thank you to the Wigan goalkeeper for that. Let's talk about the fact we let a lead slip again first. So, like I say, Jack Rodoni, Joe Pigott 2-0 up at half time, 2-1 up at half time because they got a goal back in injury time at the end of the first half, and then they equalised in the second half. At that point, do we have to credit the players for bouncing back, having driven to Dundee and eaten loads of Toblerone? No, that's another thing. To come back, having given away leads so often this season, having dropped so many points from winning positions, for it to happen again, new manager in charge, interim manager in charge, first time for a league game, it's happened again. We can only praise the mental strength there then to actually go on, keep pushing and getting a winning goal, and then seeing out the win. Probably more importantly, actually, having regained the lead at 3-2, seeing that out and getting the 3 points.
Yeah, hey, look, we were even better than what we normally are, because normally you give a 1-0 lead away, but this time we gave a 2-0 lead away. And I can't remember last time we had a 2-0 lead, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, hey, look, do you know what it is? I think, look, Mark Robinson hasn't gone in there and all of a sudden waved the magic wand and changed everything. He can put his positivity, and he's come across really well in interviews. But ultimately, the players are on the pitch, and they're the ones that have got to do it. So, yeah, I think it's like anything. Conceding a goal before half time just changes the scope of everything, and that didn't help. It wasn't a great goal, although Wigan. If you look at Wigan, they had loads of corners, and they were putting a lot of good corners in. And in the end, they got a free player, and we know that obviously the goalkeeper fumbled over the line. But yeah, to get back to 2-2, that's when we really need to make sure. And I just wonder if Wigan really. I don't think Wigan really had that edge about them, if I'm being honest with you. I think they got back to 2-2. I didn't really feel they were going to go on and win it, if I'm being honest with you. I thought they'd go out for a 2-2 draw. But yeah, you know what? Sometimes there's moments in games, isn't there? If you look at the goals, they're great goals in terms of Nesta Guinness-Walker, getting along the sideline and then finding Redoni. There were some good goals in there. There were some really good goals in there. But the final goal, yeah, you can argue a couple of ways. You can argue should the keeper have come, but ultimately Jack Redoni keeps the ball alive, and Nathan Chiswick is on his toes, and he's first to it. Their goalkeeper's the captain, so you wouldn't really want that from the captain side of it. But yeah, sometimes there's moments in games, isn't it? That ball could have gone off and so forth. I was impressed how we kept the lead after that. We had 7 minutes of injury time or additional added time on there, and actually, I thought we killed the game really well. So if you look at the stats are not good. 14 consecutive games we conceded 1 goal or more. So that's telling you need to score at least 2 to get a point. That's your problem. Do you know what I mean? So we can't keep scoring 3 goals to get something out of a game. But hopefully this will give them a little bit of confidence.
We'll come back to the number of goals we need to score when we look ahead to the Rochdale game, because they're a very interesting case this season. Let's just quickly get it out of the way. I know you've touched on it there. Yes, the first Wigan goal was a mistake from Walker. He doesn't need anyone telling him that. It's a free header 6 yards from goal, though. I know you said that they put good deliveries in, but no matter how good the delivery of the ball into the box is, you cannot give an opposition player a free header from a corner 6 yards from goal. No, and that's the thing. The problem is, right, when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, everyone looks at the goalkeeper, but he's your last line of defence. Yeah, hiding to nothing.
And you know what? I wasn't overly critical of the goalkeeper, because if you think about where that ball is headed from, what was it, 6 yards, if that? Yes, it's at him, but not be funny. Even a ball is right at you, you've got to get your hands in it. It bumps. We've seen other situations where it's just hit a goalkeeper and it's gone over the crossbar and you've gone great save, but actually it isn't. It's just instinct.
Yeah, Nathan Trott had one of those last season. People were raving about it. I was like,
that was a great save, but it was that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was almost straight at him, and it was just
And that's sometimes goalkeepers about your angles and stuff. Like sometimes the best goalkeepers don't make the best saves. The best goalkeepers position themselves well to make things look easy. That's the difference. But yeah, it was a free man. But it's easy to play a goalkeeper sometimes on that side of it. But yeah, I think it was interesting what Mark Robinson was saying, because he was saying that they'd watched their set pieces and they had varied their set pieces. And we've obviously brought in a set piece coach, which do
you know who that is?
It's someone that Mark Robinson knows. I think it might have been someone that he might have had involved in the academy.
Right.
But I don't think the name has been released or anything like that. I'd imagine if Mark Robinson is successful for the position, then probably will name of it. But yeah, because we were chatting to him on the Sunday Night Live last week, and I said about that, and I'd always been fascinated that Liverpool bought a throwing coach a couple of years ago, and that really fascinated me. And then I think it might have been Aaron mentioned the Leeds manager. I always forget his name, the Leeds manager. One who sits on the bucket.
Marco Bielsa.
That's it. Yeah, the bucket man. He has apparently 60 different restarts. 60 different restarts from a throw-in. How the hell can you find 60 different restarts?
But when you get, it's when you get into that level of detail where I think this is becoming a little bit too almost robotic for me. Like set piece codes, absolutely, I get on that because we all know, we're Wimbledon fans. Come on, we know the importance of corners, free kicks, and long throws. But when you start getting into the realm of 60 different restarts from a throw, and you're getting into the realms of American football where they have all these plays set out, written out in stone.
The rule book thing, isn't it?
Playbook,
Playbook, sorry, yeah.
And I'm just like, that's where it loses me a little bit, to be honest with you. But in terms of a set piece coach, I would be fascinated to have that conversation with Mark Robinson as well, because of that goal we conceded and just what decisions are taken in terms of that ball falling to their player, like we said, 6 yards out, free header, goalkeeper's right on his line as well. Who makes the call? Does the goalkeeper come? Is it a judgment depending on what type of ball comes in? All these sorts of questions where I'd love to pick someone's brains.
And tactical stuff, you can get into so much detail, in terms of, if you look at the goal we concede, everyone's gone front stick. So the keeper really doesn't probably want to. I think a lot of the corners early on did go flick-ons, and if you remember us from Marcus Gale, we always say a little flick-on at near stick, didn't we?
Yeah.
So it might have been a case that the keeper just couldn't come because there were so many bodies. But yeah, do you know what? Set pieces, I know what you're saying about the playbook, but when we can't sign the best players, those 1%, as they call them, can be a difference sometimes. And a lot of goals, if you look at it statistically, a lot of goals come from restarts, throw-ins, corners, etc., and stuff like that. So I like the idea. Yeah, you don't want to have a playbook, but I like the idea that we've got someone in there, and it did make a difference. I felt it made a little bit of difference. You know what I mean, in terms of that side. So yeah, it's interesting. I think yes, it would be good to have obviously a chat with Mark Robinson about that. But it's exciting. Is it new? I don't know. Sometimes, do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much things like people will do it. If you think about statistical, and we look about areas and stuff like that, Harry Bassett was doing that in Wimbledon in the 80s. Sam Allardyce was doing that in the 90s at Bolton.
Very much so.
Do you know what I mean? So they talk about that, but Sam Allardyce introduced that at Bolton. He bought Djorkaeff, and remember the players that he bought over. He was the one that actually started bringing the players over from France and stuff like that. So nothing new. It's just stuff that's recycled, isn't it? But it's interesting that Mark Robinson bought him in really, or bought him or she in really quickly.
And you mentioned that interview with Mark Robinson. You can catch that on our YouTube channel, youtube.co.uk/9YRS podcast. Formation change under Mark Robinson. Any changes in style in how we attacked or approached the game as well against Wigan? Did we try and play more football like was rumoured?
Yeah, but you know what? I just find that a little bit of a myth, though, about the possession football. The start of the season, we played really good passing football. Look at the goal we scored at Fleetwood, for argument's sake.
Yeah.
And Northampton. So we did play football. I think to say we haven't played football this season is a little bit, I think we're forgetting about the early wins that we did. So I think we've gone back to basics. Yeah, I was discussing with Mark Robinson about the press, because we played the high press, which resulted in, I think, the Joe Piggott's goal was a result of that. And it's pressing in certain areas. Interesting that we played Jack Rodoni and Ethan Chislett in the same team. We haven't done that before. We looked like we played a 4-3-3 with Longman wide on the left. He's a decent winger. He's got pace galore. He's a decent winger. I think he's a better forward, if I'm being truthful. I think he's a great finisher. But yeah, I liked it. I think we know that Ethan Chislett played a bit more of a different role. And Jack Rodoni did. But if you look at it, they are the game changers. There's no doubt about it. Ethan Chislett, I was really impressed when I saw him early on. I remember the Plymouth game at Loftus Road, and that when he picked up that ball in a little bit of space in between the forwards and the midfields, he was dangerous. They didn't have to come out and pick him up and stuff like that. So I think dropping him deeper. For me, he looked like a little bit of a free role. to sort of go and impact where he wanted to, but then defensively got into his shape. But yeah, impressive. We've just got to be careful and not get too carried away, because it's easy to get carried away because we're Wimbledon fans and we do that. But it was Wigan who have bad form. So it's good we picked up the points, but we've now got to get back-to-back wins. But isn't it mad? And after one game, one win, how different the table looks after one win.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to that in a second. I just want to, before we finish up, like you say, it is a Wigan side that were not, let's just say they didn't get great reviews from the people that watched the game in terms of their quality, but it was important because it is that 6-pointer. And we look at our results this season. If you consider the bottom 7 in the division at the moment a sort of a mini league, we've beaten Wigan, we've beaten Swindon now, we've already beaten Rochdale once. These are important points to pick up. So we can perhaps be mindful of the quality of the opposition, but also point out how important it is that we actually got over the line. Do you think last one I'll ask about personnel, do you think our centre-half pairing, Johnson and Nightingale, is that first choice, or is it Johnson and one other, or do we expect Hennigan and Thomas to come back in? We've got so many bloody centre-halves.
Well, it's because we always went for 3-5-2, doesn't it? Do you know what? It's really weird, isn't it? Because sometimes I think some players can be better in a 2 than they are in a 3, and I think Will Nightingale is a player that's better in a 2. Basically because Will loves to head everything, doesn't he? You know, Will's that certain person, whereas a 3, sometimes you can be a case, do you go, do I go, do I stick? You know, that sort of side of it. I wouldn't like a Loney to be a first choice, and I know that sounds weird, but it just doesn't. I thought we'd go with Hennigan when fit and Will Nightingale. I think that'd be quite a good pairing on that. But it was also nice just to get Luke O'Neill back to right back. He's a right back. It caused a problem with Shane McLaughlin because of where we put him, but then he's out of contract in the summer. So there you go. Yeah, exactly. But he's out of contract, you know. So are we thinking ahead to that? But I probably would go Will Nightingale. Nothing against Dale Johnson. I think he's a decent defender, but I would go with Hennigan and Will Nightingale.
Contracts in the summer as a whole other minefield that we'll come on to near the time, I think. We have got a new signing in as well. Shane Harrison, forward, 23 years of age. He's on a quote-unquote free transfer, sort of in the Alan Bennett mould of contract being cancelled elsewhere and then him signing up. Played a few minutes for Spurs many, many years ago, played in Australia and has also played in the Netherlands. So just an extra body. As we said, we need bodies and strikers because we're short with Roscoe having departed and Palmer being injured. So yeah, just adding bodies, and it's essentially, it feels like another free hit. That again, a Glyn signing before obviously he departed.
Yeah, Joe, it's an interesting signing, isn't it? Because when you might look at it as just a Roscoe. I think Corey Andrews is probably more of a Roscoe sort of chance coming from a non-league. Even though I know he started, he was in the Palace Youth Academy and then come through. You have to admire, the player we just signed for being at Melbourne and then going over to Holland. You've got to admire that because not some young kids don't do that. And I'm sure he's picked up some great life skills from playing in Australia and playing in Holland. And we've all seen, well, we haven't all seen it. If you've seen it where he catches the bottle of beer after scoring a goal. Who
do you think he is, Stone Cold Steve Austin? I mean, come on.
It's a hell of a catch, let's be fair. Do you know what I mean? It's behind him. So he's obviously got a good awareness and stuff like that. Whether he's better with a bottle of beer than he is with a football, we'll soon find out. But it looks a decent signing. It looks more of a signing that I think could be something for this season. Where some are more future. But hey, look, we've got all we can. We did need to get some numbers up front.
We're not anticipating at this stage, though, Shane or Corey being involved in first team action this weekend, at least, when Rochdale visit Plough Lane. It's a big, you mentioned it there, Stu, the win over Wigan and what difference it made to the league table. And it's going to be another big weekend because 6 of the bottom 7 are in action against each other. We are hosting Rochdale. It's 19th versus 18th. But we've also got Bristol Rovers hosting Swindon, Northampton host Burton, who are the bottom 2 at the moment. Wigan, the other team down there, they travel to Oxford. Good luck with that one, Wigan. But let's concentrate on our game. Rochdale, who we did beat earlier in the season in November. We won 1-0 at Spotland. Now, I was listening to the Sunday night show you did last week, Stu, and Aaron Paul was presenting, and he referenced Rochdale's home ground being the Crown Oil Arena. No sponsors, Spotland. Always was Spotland, always will be Spotland. But we won there in November. We've got quite a good record there, actually. Ethan Chislett scored the winner that day in injury time, the second minute of injury time. I said to Rochdale, you mentioned goals and how we need to score 2 to get a point this season. Rochdale, they have got the worst defence in the division. They've conceded 54 goals, but only 2 teams have actually scored more than them in the whole division. I saw that Rochdale have scored 41 goals. So I looked down the table thinking, well, I can't imagine anyone in the bottom half has scored more than that. And then I kept on going up and up and up and up until I got until the second and third place. It's only Portsmouth and Doncaster that have scored more. So you would anticipate goals at Plough Lane. We are winless there for a very long time now. I think this has to be considered. Is it must win? I would say it's must win.
I think every game's a must win, though, isn't it, John? We hear that, you hear the sort of free hits and stuff like that. But I think every game you go for 3 points. Rochdale are really weird. Like, if you think about it, they've scored loads of goals. They lost their top goal scorer to Salford City, Ian Henderson, who was scoring bucket loads of goals for them. Can you imagine if he was still in the team? That sort of side of it. It's, scoring a hell of a lot of goals to Salford. Yeah, do you know what? When you look back, it's crazy. Like, they won 5-0 at Wigan. And then they literally had 3 draws. They had 3 high-scoring draws back-to-back. 3-all at home to Crewe Alexander, 4-all Charlton, 3-all at home to Wigan. It's just like ridiculous. They lost at home 4-3 to Oxford. Yeah, their home film's terrible. They haven't won in 12. Haven't won in 12 at home. And we talk about, do you know what? If you're a betting man, and we're not, but if you want to look at, don't bet on a 0-0. Don't even bet. Like, you're probably looking at handicap. You're probably looking at least more than 1.5 goals or 2.5 goals, because this game's going to have goals. We've got to win back to back. We haven't won in 5 at Plough Lane, so we've got to stop that. And I just think, look, do you know what? When you win away, if you follow up with a home win, especially the situation we're in, you're laughing. Also, there's lots of games around us, and we have to remember that. Two people have lost their jobs this week in Keith Cole and Paul Tisdale. Bristol Rovers, when they come to our place and battered us 4-2, that is basically a freak result, because they have done nothing after that.
Since then.
And it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, managerial changes. Brian Barry Murphy is in charge of Rochdale at the moment. He's been in charge 2 years. It's his first job. He is under pressure for all those reasons you just mentioned, Stu. They've not won at home for 12 games, and they're well, as I say, they're 18th in the table. They're just a point above us, and if we beat them, plunge them further into trouble. But yeah, I mean, that shows you the scale of the problem. But down the bottom, so ourselves, Bristol Rovers, and Northampton now having part company with the managers over the past few weeks. Tisdale at Bristol Rovers, like you say, that game at Plough Lane, they beat us 4-2. That was an upwardly mobile team that day. I cannot fathom what has happened there. There seems to be some sort of malaise at that football club. It's very strange. They historically bounce around 3rd and 4th tiers. They had that year in the conference.
Yeah,
but they do seem to bounce around the 2 divisions. Northampton with the other ones. Keith Curle, he got promoted last season. Yeah,
do you know what? I just found that it's so difficult, isn't it? Because he got them promoted into League One, and they're just everyone's panicking now, aren't they? The window's gone, but everyone's still panicking, and that's why it's really strange. If I was John Sheridan at Swindon Town, I'd be pretty worried about receiving emails or phone calls, because they've played 2 more games than everyone else around there. They are seriously in the trouble. So I wouldn't be surprised if another job goes. So I think what this is showing is how desperate teams. We started on about the salary cap early on, but I think it's showing how desperate teams are to not get relegated. And I know that's the same in any season, but I think this season you're starting to see, like, I've not seen people panic after the transfer window. We've done it ourselves, but I don't think that'd be the last of it. And there's a couple of clubs. It's interesting. One of my friends the other day said about Fleetwood could be a team that gets in it. Remember, there's always a team, isn't it, that gets in trouble?
Yeah, falls. Yeah.
Yeah, Fleetwood could be that in terms of, just very much off topic, very interesting, which is it Chad Evans, who went to Sheffield Wednesday in the end, but Joe Barton was talking about the fact that their chairman took out an £800,000 grant early on in the season because of finances. Now, if Fleetwood are struggling with finances, that tells you quite a lot about the situation, isn't it? So that's why people are panicking. But it's a big weekend. It's a big weekend. If we can win now, and then we're in a good position, which is crazy after we've just got rid of our manager because we were apparently in trouble.
Yeah, we didn't panic at all, did we?
No.
As you say, it's really tight down the bottom there. You've got 4 teams on 24 points. We're on 25, Rochdale on 26, and then there's your gap, 7 points to Shrewsbury in 17th. So at the moment, it is the bottom 7 scrapping it out.
Yeah.
Someone could drop. We will see there's still quite a long way to go. A quick scoreline prediction for Saturday, Rochdale?
I'm going to go for 4-2 to us.
I will very much take that. Happy days. Love some goals, although I'd prefer a 1-0 myself on Football Manager, but I'm not playing Football Manager. This is real life. And do you know what? Imagine if it did happen now. Imagine if it was 0-0 now. Could you imagine it? Yeah. It's like 30 shots each, but no one can actually put the ball in the net. Be one of those. But that is Saturday, 3 p.m. at Plough Lane. Right, announcements before we sign off. We have announcements about the AFC Wimbledon Supporters Poker Night, which is running an event this Saturday, the 13th of February, trying to raise money for the Dons Local Action Group. The Supporters Poker Night's actually raised over £1,000 last year for the NHS, run 2 charity events for the NHS, and now they're looking for more local cause in the local action group, Don's Local Action Group. So if you're interested, please visit justgiving.com/AFCW Poker Night for more information on that. And Stu, Sunday Night Lives are on YouTube now. So Sunday nights, what time are you doing Sunday nights where people can get more 9 Years podcast content?
Yeah, it's the 7:30 on a Sunday night, just because I don't know, just my son goes to bed at 7 o'clock and I can quite easily. So yeah, we're on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, we've just got over 500 subscribers on there. If you haven't subscribe and you'll get a notification when we go live. We will have a first team player on Sunday. We won't know who that is until Saturday because we'll find out what's happening on the pitch first. But we will have a first team player with us joining us, and we're hoping to have a player and a management if we can most weeks. So yeah, good for Sunday night. Sunday's boring, isn't it? It's just like going into Monday, it's like Groundhog Day. So we just have a bit of fun on a Sunday, and of course it always helps if you win.
Indeed. It is half term this week, so that is something to look forward to as well. But that is it. Thank you very much for listening this week. Thank you for joining us. Stu, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Quick shout out to Lemon and Lime Jaffa Cakes from Marks & Spencer's. Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, 2 + 2 = 4. We will speak to you again next Friday.